Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Salt Princess here, and today I wanted to show you something, but it may have died while I was trying to show it to you already. And now I'm struggling with hardware issues in the vacuum render. But that's okay, because we're going to tough it out, and eventually all of these textures are going to be added to my shader cache, and at that point I'll finally see that it's going to be okay. That being said, as you can see by my entering of my personal garden, that we have finally reached Path of Exile's 3.11 Harvest League. And I gotta say, so far, I'm really enjoying it. And I'll get to the reasons as to specifically why I'm enjoying it so much in just a minute. But what I'd like to do in this video is introduce you to a brand new character archetype, which I think is probably going to see a rise to fame and popularity probably pretty damn soon. So, I decided to league start with an occultist. We're playing a new character called CloutChaser.tv, and we're only level 64, and the fucked up thing about that is we're still in Act 8. Yeah, that's how my league's going so far. Day 2, by the way. But CloutChaser.tv is a Wintertide brand occultist, right? So we're an occultist. We are scaling up Wintertide brand as well as Cold Snap. I do also have Creeping Frost in here, aka Arctic Breath, but I think realistically we can just, for the purpose of this video, talk about Cold Snap. And I'll just state right now that in the future, when I begin to talk about these two skills, Cold Snap and the Creeping Frost are interchangeable skills that serve a utility purpose and a utility function in this particular build. But we all know what brands do. Wintertide brand is a cold damage over time brand, and so I'd just like to show you approximately how it works. So just like any other brand skill, you're going to layer up as many brands on the bosses as you can, and we're doing cold damage over time, so as long as those brands persist on the boss, you're doing a pretty substantial amount of single target damage. And now the really cool thing about Wintertide brand versus other brand skills is there is this added caveat with the particular skill gem that states specifically, let's see if I could find it on this thing, can have 3 brands attached to an enemy. So, that being said, Wintertide brand at baseline, just in the skill gem itself, already allows you to attach 2 brands to your enemy. And then, with the help of a rune binder node on your ascendancy passives tree, you can actually add that 3rd brand. And so what's really cool about this is, just like any other damage over time skill, there's not actually a hit that registers with this skill. Your quote-unquote DPS on your tooltip is a complete and utter lie. We're currently dealing 2,687.8 cold damage over time per brand. So you multiply this number by 3, and I'm just gonna say, for the purpose of making this as quick as possible, I'm already doing about 9,000 damage per second with just the Wintertide brand at level 64, while I'm still leveling a brand new character in a brand new league. None of my gear is good at all. I have a faded breath, I have movement speed boots, I have some resistances on these gloves, I guess. This wand has cold damage over time multiplier, but it's the lowest possible tier, and this one is a starter wand that I got in Lion Eyes Watch. And that's all I have to say about that. It's literally a 1 property blue wand that just happens to have +1 to all cold gems. So that's pretty cool. And this is perfect. So we're gonna do a nice quick little delirium. And And once I actually get into Highgate, I'll talk a little bit more about the build. But I want to stress that this really is day 2 of Harvest League. And I really did just kill the Sisters of Solaris and Lunaris in like 15 seconds on my league starter with no items. So that being said, I'm going to posit right this very second that Wintertide brand very soon and very quickly is going to rise to the very, very top of the tier list in terms of budget, single target, boss killing builds. So let's talk a little bit about why while we run through this zone really quickly. So like I said, this is my league starter. I've done nothing to acquire any great currency, and even though this league is already shaping up to be the most casual friendly and SSF friendly league that Path of Exile is probably ever going to know, I haven't lucked out, and I have yet to hit any good crafts out of my garden. And that's probably my own fault, and just simply straight up lack of experience and lack of familiarity with the new league mechanic. Doesn't mean that it's a bad league, doesn't mean that it's a bad league mechanic, doesn't even mean that I'm bad, it just simply means that I'm unlucky and I haven't spent enough time with it yet. But, that being said, in spite of relatively mid RNG, we are still exceeding, we are still perusing. The only thing I'm really dealing with on this character is a serious lack of EHP. That being said, I'm not going to show you my deaths because it's embarrassing, and because I've also been drinking a little bit during this league because of reasons. So, long story short, I'm not focused up as well as I should be, and so there have been a couple deaths. And that being said, typically, if I'd be leveling a new character, I'd have a little tiny bit more than 2,000 EHP at this point. I think a lot of players would have closer to 5 EHP, so 5,000 EHP. So, let's get into Highgate, and let's talk about the Wintertide brand Occultist. So far, we've only been to 2 different labyrinths, and so our ascendancy tree is not actually fully fleshed out yet, but let me talk to you really quickly about how I started this character out. So I already pointed out that this is a item level 16 wand that just happens to have +1 level to all skill gems. Got really lucky. Lily sold this to me in Act 1, right after I killed Mervale. I went to talk to Lily. She said, "Yo, what up? Hey, got this wand." And I was like, "Thanks, girl. You looking out." And so I wore that wand, and I've been wearing that one. And that being said, I got to Act 2, and lo and behold, your girl Yena showing up with the other one. Actually, I think I'm lying. I think I actually crafted this one myself in my little garden. This might be a craft. Let's just pretend like Yena gave it to me. I think I crafted it. So all we're doing so far is we're scaling up our cold damage over time multiplier, as well as the level of our skill gems. This is completely exactly the same as leveling up any Chaos dot build that you've ever played before, specifically ED Contagion. And in my experience thus far, that's sort of the mindset that I've gone into building this character with. This is an ED Contagion character that just happens to scale up cold damage and doesn't use Essence Drain or Contagion, even though it's an ED Contagion character. So that being said, as you can see, we have Energy Shield bases, Energy Shield bases, Energy Shield bases, Energy Shield bases, and Energy Shield bases. So, from the very beginning, we went through the Energy Shield nodes, and then swung directly over to pick up Rune Binder. I felt like this was the most important node to take early on because it really helps out with your Act bosses. As you just saw, I cleared an Act boss in not very much time at all. And that's how every single act boss, including Malachi thus far, has felt. So, first and foremost, rush straight over and pick up your Rune Binder. I think this kind of holds true for most of the brand skills that you want to play in Path of Exile. From there, we actually built up over here and took Dot Multi and Runesmith. And the reason that I think Runesmith is a really important thing to take is because this line right here says not only increase cast speed with brand skills, but it also says enemies take 5% increased damage per brand attached to them, which means we're getting 15% increased damage during any kind of single target encounter, boss fights, and we're also getting cast speed, and we're getting the additional brand. And the other reason that this is so important is this has brand skills have increased duration, increased duration, increased duration. I'm sorry, this one doesn't say increased duration. Essentially, these increase your duration. These also, brand equity, also increases your brand duration. So why is brand duration so important? Well, Wintertide brand, as I've stated, is a damage over time skill, and actually it has a relatively low uptime. Currently, with all of the increased duration stuff that I have, my Wintertide brand actually only lasts for, where is it? Can I find it? Oh goodness. 4 seconds can be attached for a total duration of 3.98 seconds. The attached time, in conjunction with the cast time, means that after I've cast 3 brands, all 3 brands can only persist on the target for an increase of like 2.3, 2.5 seconds. So I can only have all 3 brands attached to one target for a maximum of 2-ish seconds at the moment. And we can increase our duration a little bit more in a few other ways, but that being said, Wintertide brand actually has a stacking debuff that it applies to the enemies. As you can see at the very, very bottom, it says activates every 0.19 seconds while attached. Well, with a brand like Storm brand, an activation is just a pulse of damage, right? It deals damage every 1.9 seconds. Bah! What's different about Wintertide brand is Wintertide brand stacks once every 1.9 seconds, right? And so, in my mind, knowing how dot multi works and knowing how stacking debuffs work, I figured that having a really long duration on our brand with a really, really quick activation period will allow for our brands to rapidly accelerate up to a full 20 stacks of our debuff, while also persisting as long as humanly possible. And so why is that important, right? So we're dealing all of our damage after we've applied 20 debuffs, right? And so if we have 3 brands that stack a debuff once every 0.2 seconds, right? So 0.2 goes into 1 second 5 times, and we have 3 debuffs. So that means in 1 second, we get 15 applications of our debuff. That means it takes about 1.5 seconds to fully stack up the Wintertide brand debuff and get the maximum amount of our cold damage over time. That being said, though, if we attach at a later date, I don't even know where it is, unfortunately. I have a Swift brand support in here. You see that Swift brand support actually says 59% more activation frequency. I intend to make Swift brand support my 6th or possibly 5th link into my Wintertide brand character. And so that being stated, this simply means that, one, our brands don't last nearly as long as they used to, which is why we necessitate things like increased brand duration on these 2 parts of the Runesmith, as well as brand equity. And we're also eventually going to get down to things like potency of will increase skill effect duration. This will actually just increase every single duration on our brand skills, the brand attachment duration, the brand lingering duration, just the overall duration of the dots that it applies after, as well as the duration of the puddle that the Wintertide brand leaves behind once it's pulled off. And I haven't even stated that part yet. Wintertide brand creates a magical brand which can attach to a nearby enemy, dealing cold damage over time and chilling them. It periodically activates while attached, gaining stages that raise the damage, and when removed, a short duration debuff dealing the same amount of damage over time and chill is applied to all nearby enemies, each nearby enemy. So that being said, increasing skill effect duration also increases that puddle. So eventually I'll get there and I'll show you what that puddle looks like. But what this tree is going to wind up looking like when it's all said and done is we're going to come down here, we're going to get Potency of Will, we're going to anoint Exceptional Performance, and then we are going to find all of the generic dot multi that we can. So this is a generic dot multi, right? This is pretty much the only generic dot multi that I can think of. Let's see, over time multiplier. So as you can see, this is just over time multiplier. This is cold damage over time multiplier. This is something that we might actually take. Perfect Agony might be pretty suitable for this build. We'll find out eventually. And this is unfortunately chaos damage over time multiplier. So as you can see, the generic dot multi doesn't really exist. So it's going to be a challenge to do. And so being that the generic dot multi doesn't exist, the skill effect duration does. And so that's a more plentiful thing for our passive skill tree. So in terms of the passive skill tree, that's what I intend to aim for. And we'll see over the next couple of weeks how that plays out for me. But already, it's feeling really good. Really, really, really good. So I feel like that's a pretty decent look at the skill tree. In terms of the links that I've taken so far, we're using hypothermia support. This not only gives us more cold damage over time, but it also increases the effect of chill, and if I'm not mistaken, chill actually increases the effect of cold damage over time as well as slows the enemy's movement, which is really helpful on bosses since you basically have 100% uptime on your hypothermia. It's actually a pretty dramatic decrease in their action speed, and so this actually makes boss fights quite a lot easier, as well as being an incredibly damaging skill for boss fights. So not only are the bosses less threatening, but they also die way faster, so that's cool. We're also linking it up to an efficacy support. This gives us more skill effect duration, as well as more spell damage, which gets converted into dot multi through the Wintertide brand. And it also gives us just straight up dot multi as well. Beyond that, we're using controlled destruction. We're not intending to crit. We'll see how this plays out once I actually spec into Perfect Agony, but we're not there yet. So right now, this is just a straight up 39% more spell damage, and just like most of the chaos damage over time skills that you're used to, your straight spell damage, your percentage increase to spell damage, actually gets converted into dot multi with this kind of skill as well. So another important caveat to note is that Wintertide brand actually also converts your cast speed to activation frequency. So not only does cast speed make you throw out more brands faster, but it also increases the frequency at which they apply that debuff. So cast speed is a very big deal for Wintertide brand. The application of each debuff obviously determines how quickly you're going to melt your enemies, right? This is literally the meltiness of the build. So more cast speed, more meltiness. It's pretty good. And so that's really kind of all that I have to say about the character thus far. Wintertide brand, it feels so good. And now, that being said, in terms of being a clear speed skill, it's a little slow. It's a little bit slow. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, I'm probably like 12 to 14 hours in, and I'm not done with this story yet. One, I'm not that great at the story. I full clear everything. Two, my garden's way better than yours. My garden is way better than yours already, so suck it. Um, but also, um, it's a slow clearing skill, as you can see. I'm not using brand recall. Not because I don't like brand recall, just simply because once I get the Swift brand support into the build, I don't even think the brands are gonna last long enough to even require recalling at all. So my intention is to stack a lot of cast speed and just sort of run around the map, casting and then frost blinking and then casting and then frost blinking. Oh! Speaking of Frostblink, one of the things that I didn't mention about this skill yet is Cold Snap. So Cold Snap, obviously, is another cold damage over time skill that also scales off of the same things, at least in the context of percent spell damage. Percent increased spell damage also applies to the cold damage over time multiplier for Cold Snap. But Cold Snap is interesting because Cold Snap can actually be linked up to Bone Chill. And to make a long story short about Bone Chill gives you cold exposure. You apply a cold exposure to your enemies, making them take even more cold damage over time. So let's find a nice little rare monster. I'm going to do a thing with a rare monster here, so pay attention, okay? So this is just a regular pack, right? I'm just cold snapping. This is just cold snap. Right, like it's already strong. So we put one brand on the rare mob and then cold snap it, and as you can see, it just dies. One brand, cold snap. And it's just dead, dude. One brand, cold snap. And everything dies. And so this can also be exchanged with Creeping Frost. That's a Creeping Frost. This is a Creeping Frost. Creeping Frost. Creeping Frost. Creeping Frost on these golems. Creeping Frost, right? Like, Creeping Frost is a spell. People are familiar with it. It used to be called Arctic Breath. It's basically the same exact thing as Cold Snap. It deals a little tiny bit less damage, but it moves, right? And so eventually your brands are going to move too. So my philosophy with the Cold Snap thing, or the Creeping Frost rather, is that you can use Creeping Frost as like a curse on hit that also applies the Bone Chill exposure, and then lay down a couple of your brands, and they're just gonna creep together, right? So you can just go brand, cold, Creeping Frost, or Creeping Frost brand, and then just kind of move, and it's gonna apply that exposure, and it's gonna move in tandem with your brands as they attach to subsequent enemies in a path and such. And so, even though it's definitely not the fastest build that I've ever played, it's very strong, and there's a lot of room for really good synergies. I mean, it's just feeling great so far. So, that being said, we're barely getting started in Act 9 right now, and already I am just blasting through boss content, specifically boss content, and that's the content in Path of Exile that I actually really care about, like, tremendously. I love doing, like, the betrayal stuff, and I love finding Aul, and I love farming at least one Cirrus a day, like, at least one. And I have a feeling that in terms of my league starter, I'm gonna have the easiest Cirrus kill. I'm gonna hand to the Bible right here. In terms of my league starters for the past year, I promise you, Wintertide brand is going to be the strongest boss killer I have ever league started with. Period. I'll give you guys an update video soon enough in terms of how it's going over the next couple days. Like I've said, I have a lot of shit going on in my personal life. I am way behind already in terms of my Path of Exile league start. Just way behind. And thankfully, this is a very casual, friendly league, so I'm not concerned with it at all. I don't feel like I actually don't. I am behind in terms of progression, but I don't feel behind at all. And I think that that's a really cool thing about this league. I'll have other videos in the future to go into how I feel about this league and why I think this league is so good, but I'm going to say now that Harvest is a huge success in terms of my interaction with Path of Exile. And not only that, but at least this one new brand skill is insane. It's insane. It's so strong. It's so strong and stupid. Like, I've had no struggle. No struggle at all. The only struggle I've had is actually remaining in this chair because so much shit is happening out there. But it's so good. It's so goddamn good. I first and foremost, I hope you guys started with a slam skill. And you guys are having a great time with that because my next build is going to be a General's Cry EQ blah, 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 something. I think it's going to be a really good league for a lot of reasons. But that being said, I haven't seen anybody starting with Wintertide brand yet. I haven't heard anybody talking about Wintertide brand yet. So allow me to be the first to state that Wintertide brand is decidedly very OP. Decidedly very overpowered. And I think it's worth your time. Definitely, as a league starter, it's slow. So if you were to make this your second character, your dedicated boss killer, I think you'd find that it's very inexpensive and highly effective. My name is Salt Princess. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you guys are having an awesome league start. I'm really excited about the content that's being released. Not necessarily because of the profoundly exciting content that it is, but it is exciting to me that I can walk away from the game and not feel like I'm losing progress. That is exciting to me. So I'm stoked. I'm thrilled about the new skill gems. I'm skilled about the way that this league is going to play out. I can already see it. And I hope you guys are as stoked as I am. I think it's going to be really good. So I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves. I hope you guys are taking care of your friends and family and the people around you. And most importantly, I hope you guys are having a good time. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Ciao!